July in Kansas City is a heavy month, and the 17th of July, 1981, 45 years ago this week, was a Friday. Inside the Hyatt Regency, the newest hotel in town, the evening felt like the weather's opposite. An atrium of glass, 50 feet of cool air above the lobby floor, a big band playing below, and about 1,600 people at a tea dance, a Depression-era ritual, an hour of swing for a hard decade, revived by the year-old hotel as its signature Friday night. Two suspended walkways crossed the atrium overhead, one directly above the other, and guests leaned on the railings to watch the dancers below. The trombonist had just finished his solo in Duke Ellington's Satin Doll when the room heard a pop and then a loud crack. The fourth-floor walkway fell onto the second-floor walkway, and both fell onto the crowded dance floor. It took about 1 second. Everything after it is digging. Karen Jeter was 37, and by her family's telling, the best dancer in it. Her son remembered it the way sons do. She was a really good dancer, loved to dance, loved music. She's the one that taught me how to dance. That evening, she was on the floor with Eugene Jeter, 48. They were recently married. Around them, the Friday crowd, office workers unwinding, retirees who remembered tea dances the first time around, couples in a dance contest while a camera taped it all. Several dozen guests had drifted onto the walkways for the view, most on the second-floor bridge. The bridges were the hotel's showpiece, slender decks of steel and concrete hung on rods from the roof, no columns underneath. The hotel had been open for barely a year. When the walkways came down, Karen and Eugene Jeter were dancing. They were among the 114 people who never went home. What the falling steel left behind was a lake in the dark. More than 60 tons of wreckage lay across the dance floor, and underneath it, people were alive, pinned flat, breathing in whatever gaps the debris left. Ruptured pipes poured water into the pile, fed from tanks that could not simply be shut off, and the hotel's front doors were damming it in while the trapped felt it rise. The fire chief saw it and gave an order, no manual contains. A bulldozer through the front doors of the newest hotel in town. The doors came down, and the water poured out. All night, the help arrived. Crews from 34 fire trucks, doctors from 5 hospitals, and from the city's construction companies, cranes, jackhammers, and concrete saws, handed over without a signature. A deputy fire chief never forgot it. They said, "Take what you want." Nobody, he said, ever submitted a bill. Dr. Joseph Weckrell had just finished an 11-hour emergency room shift and was running stadium stairs when the call found him. 12 minutes after the collapse, he was in the ruined lobby, and he ran it for the next 12 hours. He sorted the injured, those who would die, those who would survive regardless, and those the next hour could save, and spent everything on the third. A ground-floor exhibition hall became his morgue. "You have to understand the chaos and the carnage that had gone on in that lobby," he said. The water was flowing, the mains were cut. Electrical wires were hanging and arcing and sparking. There were no lights. Every so often he whistled the whole operation silent. The cranes, the saws, the generators, hundreds of rescuers holding still, so everyone could listen for voices under the concrete. Freeing one trapped man meant amputating his pinned leg with a chainsaw. The man later died. "You know the smell of blood," Weckrell said, "but you don't know the smell of carnage." Mark Williams lay pinned under the lower walkway for more than 9 hours, both legs dislocated, the water rising around him before the doors came down. Rescuers had nearly stopped hoping for another voice when he called out. He was the last person brought out of the rubble alive. one of 29. Around 5 in the morning, workers lifted the last slab and found 31 bodies beneath it. After roughly 14 hours, the digging through concrete was over. 111 people were dead within days, 3 more fought longer, and the toll settled at 114, with more than 200 injured, the deadliest accidental structural collapse in American history, then and still. Firefighters mark that lobby as the birthplace of modern, urban, heavy rescue. Across town the next morning, Karen Jeter's son, Brent Wright, learned what the dance had taken. It was unimaginable. You never expect that kind of news, especially when you're a kid. When the digging through concrete ended, the digging through paper began. Investigators from the National Bureau of Standards, the federal government's engineering laboratory, walked into the silenced atrium to ask what had held the walkways up. The answer: steel rods from the roof, passing through box beams under each bridge, each just 2 steel channels welded toe to toe, a nut and washer underneath. The whole weight of a walkway rested on a handful of nuts. The original drawings ran each rod in one piece, roof to second floor, so the lower bridge's weight bypassed the 4th floor beam entirely. Then, in the winter of 1979, the fabricator changed it. 2 shorter rods instead of 1 long one, because a single rod needed threads along its length, and hoisting the walkway would wreck them. A practical fix for a real problem, and it quietly doubled the load on the 4th floor connection, which now carried its own bridge on 1 rod and the entire lower walkway on the other. On the night of the tea dance, the box beams bent, the nuts pulled through the welded seams, and the bridges dropped off their rods. The obvious story ends there. A fabricator's change killed 114 people. The National Bureau of Standards kept digging and found something worse. It tested the connection as originally designed and found it already failing on paper, able to carry only about 60% of what Kansas City's building code required. The investigators put it in writing. Even if the now notorious design shift in the hanger rod details had not been made, the entire design of all 3 walkways, including the one which did not collapse, was a significant violation of the Kansas City Building Code. The change had not broken a sound structure. It took a connection already below the law and cut it roughly in half again, to about 30% of what the code demanded. In the words of the Bureau's Edward Frang, the walkways had only minimal capacity to resist their own weight. They did not need a crowded party to fall. They needed time. So who approved the change? The fabricator swore under oath that it called the engineering firm for approval. The engineers swore the call never came. The call is still disputed, 4 decades on. What happened on paper is not. In February of 1979, the engineering firm received 42 shop drawings, among them the one carrying the 2-rod change. 10 days later, all 42 went back, stamped with the seal of Jack Gillum, the engineer whose stamp authorized construction. Gillum had not drawn the connection or checked it. The daily structural work ran under a younger engineer in his firm, Daniel Duncan. But a seal does not share blame. That is what a seal is. And the building gave everyone one last chance. That October, while the hotel was still being built, a huge section of the atrium roof collapsed, reportedly before dawn, with the site empty. The engineers promised to check every steel connection in the atrium, and their reports assured the owner it was safe. The connection that would kill 114 people was never checked. The owner, meanwhile, had 3 times declined to pay for the engineer's eyes on the construction site. The reckoning had no prison attached. Missouri's licensing board brought the case, and after a hearing that ran 26 weeks, the judge handed down 442 pages on November 14, 1985. gross negligence, misconduct, unprofessional conduct. Both engineers lost their licenses. No criminal charges were ever filed. The only court that ever judged them could take away licenses, not liberty. Brent Wright grew up and built what the city had never managed. A memorial to the 114 dedicated 34 years after they died. When a Florida condominium tower fell in 2021, the same bureau in the rubble, under a modern name, Wright told those families, "Eventually you'll see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel," and Jack Gillum carried it. At the hearings, he fought the findings. Then, for the rest of his life, he stood before rooms full of engineers and confessed. The memories disturbed him 365 days a year, he said. He lectured to scare the daylights out of them so it could never happen again. It always came down to one sentence. Nobody ever calculated what that connection could hold. Not the firm that drew it, not the firm that built it. No one. 114 people died at a dance because the connection that failed was never designed. The official verdict was written in November of 1985, but the post-mortem writes itself. The only question is whether anyone reads it before the next one.